About the history of different governance changes in Nova Scotia. So the history of amalgamations in Nova Scotia is very short. There really hasn't been any true amalgamations. So currently, Pictou County has filed with the Utility Review Board. They filed probably about 2 months ago. They had their preliminary hearing. So there's 4 municipal units in Pictou County that have applied to amalgamate. So there's actually 6 units in the entire county. 4 of them have applied together to amalgamate. So there has been, people would argue that HRM, CBRM are amalgamations. They're a little bit different. They were regional governments. Queens would be the closest to an amalgamation, but again, that was also a regional model. So there's a few little differences to that process. So it's not a true amalgamation. So even though there's a lot of discussion about amalgamation, there hasn't been opportunities. Annexation in Nova Scotia. So there's been one attempt at annexation in recent history, and that was in Antigonish, where the town of Antigonish tried to annex some properties and land from the county of Antigonish. That was in 2005. Basically what happened there is that the town filed to annex some land. There was some commercial land just outside of the town of Antigonish that the town wanted to add to their town. Obviously, the county didn't want that. The county actually filed a counter application, which was to amalgamate. They did spend a lot of time and a lot of money, and at the end of the day, basically, there was no change. So the history of dissolutions, there has been a few more dissolutions in the province of Nova Scotia. And again, just to give you some ideas, that there hasn't been a whole lot, but back in the 40s, there were 3 towns that dissolved. So that was Port Hood, Wedgeport, and Joggins. In 1969, the town of Inverness dissolved. And then there's obviously a 40-year gap in there. And then Canso was the kind of the most recent, or the first one in recent history to go through the dissolution process. So Canso was a little bit different because it was the first one that had happened in 40 years. It took a little bit longer than the other 3 that have occurred more recently. And was a little bit different as far as not the result, but as far as the money and the time and that type of thing that one took. And then, again, as most of you know, the 3 most recent are Bridgetown, Spring Hill, and West Hants. All of which occurred in just this past year or in this year. So Bridgetown and Spring Hill, their date was April 1 and Hansport was July 1. So just to add to the history, so I mentioned Pictou. So again, there's 4 units in Pictou County that are looking to amalgamate. That process is going on right now. And there's 2 towns that have also filed for dissolution, which I mentioned, the town of Mulgrave and the town of Carsborough was the other one, both of which the preliminary hearing for Carsborough is Monday, and the preliminary hearing for Mulgrave is December 1. So a lot of people say to me, well, how long does this take? If you wanted to make a change, how long does it take? So if a decision was made to submit an application to the Utility Review Board, the preliminary hearing would occur typically within a month or 2. So again, most recent example, the Mulgrave application was filed on Monday. The preliminary hearing is December 1, so that's basically a month, almost exactly. So again, that kind of gives the timeline for the start of the process. Once the preliminary hearing is held, again, if the board feels that there's enough information to move forward, they will order the studies. Typically, there's about 2 to 3 months to complete the studies. The timelines are always quite tight, but there is ample time to do everything that needs to be done. After the studies are all submitted, there's usually a couple of months in there where there's, again, an opportunity for the information reviews to go, or information requests to go back and forth and to add more information. Then they set the times for the public hearing. So just to give you an idea, most of the most recent processes that have happened, the past 3 dissolutions, they've all occurred in about 1 year, okay? From the date of application to the actual effective date, the day that the town dissolves has always been about 1 year. So the other big question over here is costs. Who pays for this? So in the MGA again, what it says when you look at the government's change is that the board can order who pays for the studies. So in the past, 3 dissolutions and council as well, the province of Nova Scotia has paid for the process. So typically, you know, you have to pay for the studies, you have to hire consultants, there's certainly legal fees involved because usually one or both municipalities have their own legal counsel, and then there's costs for the board themselves to come and hold the meetings and all that type of thing. So the cost of government change, when there's cooperative parties, has always been supported by the province. So we're going to talk a little bit about samples. And I want to be very clear that these are I'm just throwing this out there to use as an example. I'm not suggesting that this is the way to go or the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do or anything like that. Tonight I have no opinion. So sample annexation, Windsor, West Hants. So certainly this has been discussed. If Windsor were to annex, and I use Falmouth as an example, Falmouth would become part of the town. So that would basically, in this case, you would expand the town boundaries. You'd have the community of Falmouth become part of the town. Roads and maintenance would become the responsibility of the town, and there would still be 2 municipal governments. So a sample amalgamation of Windsor and West Hants. If Windsor and West Hants were to amalgamate, you'd have basically 2 units become a new unit. So remember, you'd say 2 municipalities, both dissolve their charters or give up their charters, and you create a new municipal unit. And just as an example, possibly the municipality of the District of Avon. In amalgamation, road responsibility remains the same. So currently, the way it works in the province of Nova Scotia is that towns pay for the maintenance of their own roads, the maintenance, upkeep, plowing, etc. of their own roads, and anything in the counties are a responsibility of the province. That wouldn't change. So even though there's not a town, it would become the responsibility of the new unit in an amalgamated unit. The electoral boundaries get redrawn. So again, in every government change, they look at if there's an amalgamation, you look at the entire unit and say how many people are living in each area. Let's redraw the boundaries so that there's fair representation. So if there's 18,000 people in a combined unit, you might look at that and say, well, we want to make sure that no councillor is responsible for more than 1,500 or 2,000 people, whatever it might be, and then you set the number of seats that there would be on the new council based on that number and looking at those boundaries. And in an amalgamation case, there would be 1 municipal government. So, sample dissolution. So if Windsor were to dissolve, the town of Windsor would become a part of the current West Hants municipality. Again, the road responsibility remains the same. Based on all the previous dissolutions, this is what has occurred. The electoral boundaries would be redrawn again. So again, the same process, looking at change of population, setting up new boundaries, new electoral districts, and 1 municipality, which would be the municipality of the District of West Hants. And then the last one, which I did say I would touch on briefly, is regional government. So again, the regional government is all municipal units within 1 county come together to form a new government structure. So because we live in Hants County, you need to include East Hants. So in the case of a regional government, you would take the town of Windsor, the municipality of West Hants, and the municipality of East Hants, and combine them to form a new unit. So again, 3 units become a new unit, which might be something like the municipality of the region Hants. For the road responsibilities would most likely remain the same. Electoral boundaries would be redrawn, and you would have one municipal government. Okay, so that brings us to the conclusion of the presentation. And what we'll do now is basically open up for questions. Again, Paul or Jennifer will hand around some cards if you prefer, just to write down a question. And if you want to ask a question, again, we'll try to keep the questions going. So ask one question, and then certainly go to the back of the line if you want to ask another question.